Hello everybody, my name is Sophia. I'm from the Chicago Public Library Cyber Navigator of the Chinatown branch. Today we are going to have the eChicago Global Network Conference on the link on China and Chinese Chicago. So we'll be discussing how Beijing is informatizing its communities, what to do with various digital connections between China and the US. What are they going to look like? The first presenter will be Haixia,
Right.
and she is from the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign.
Good morning, everybody. I'm very glad to be the first speaker, and welcome everybody who is in this room. And my name is Haixia Zhao. Now I'm a PhD student in Peking University. I'm just a waiting student in this list of UIC from last September to this September. And today, my topic is about libraries as a public computing center. There's two examples from China. And first, I want to give acknowledgement. I would like to express my deep gratitude to all those who helped me finishing this research. A special acknowledgement to first be shown to Professor Adrian and Professor Kate, my two directors to do this research. And I also want to thank two teamwork members from China. And they all provide me the precious case study material for me. And then it's about the method. We mainly adopt the D7 method. Their definition of the problem, data collection, digitalization, discover, design, dissemination, and differences, which was taught us in the community informatics summer school in Peking University in 2011. We have interviews and questionnaires, also other methods to have case study. And about the research in instruction. As we know that in the information age, more and more libraries use the computers and the technologies to help more people acquire information. Public computing plays important role in information society. Based on the concept of the informatics movement, Kate examines informatics movement in people's everyday lives as they sought help as community library. 4 types of library were involved: basic literacy, computer literacy, library literacy, and domain literacy. In addition, people prefer to seek help from those with enough skills who are close at hand, such as community libraries. Understanding the informatics movement could accelerate people and society's ambitious transition to an inclusive digital age. Now, here are 2 examples from China. And the first one is Andrea Community Library. About the background and history of Andrea Community Library is Andrea Community Library was spread geographic community characters which are thoroughly open to the public. Besides, the e-reading lab inside the library with 12 computers is exactly the public computing center in this community. And on May 2006, Andrea Community Library was built in the Central Park of West Ridge, which turned out to have brought big convenience to the residents in opposite districts. And about the ICT in Andrea Community Library, they are here. There are 13 computers in Andrea Community Library. Among them, 1 for librarian, 1 for sharing project use, and others for patrons. But The computers are very old. Just like the picture shows, the speed is very slow, I think. And the potential computing center of Adrian Community Library is one is policy and fund support. Attribute to policy and economic factors, Adrian Community Library is expected to have great opportunity to improve its cyber power among local community. According to the 12 5-year Cultural Development Plan of China, in the near future, Chinese government will promote the utility of digital and website technology in the public culture area. And another is supporting form legal and library profession. As the capital city of China, public library system in Beijing is well developed and legal support is available. According to the library rules of Beijing, library should equip it by computer and internet facility, device of micro video and photocopy documents and information and others. And there's another community library. The name of the community library is Civil Mobile Library. Actually, Civil Mobile Library is a private library, just like a social library in the 19th century of America. Although it is not a public library, it attracts lots of people in the community nearby. And the picture is we have surveyed the library last September. And there are 4 interesting demographics of the Civil Mobile Library. The picture one is the age distribution of patrons in Civil Mobile Library. About 15 are between 20 to 40 ages. And second is the way to learn computer. This is the way patrons in the Civil Mobile Library first learn and use computer. And our data shows that patrons younger than 20 learn computer for the first time by their family. On the other hand, most of other people are taught in school. And second is this is what patrons in Civil Mobile Library use computer for. About 42 patrons use computer for entertainment. Only 5% use computers for searching information. And the fourth picture is the major information channels. When we look deep into how these patrons get information or knowledge, we found that it differs between ages. Most of the young get information from internet, and seniors get information from traditional media, like reading books, printed newspapers, magazines, listening broadcasts, or watching television programs. Youngs are mainly born in information age. They get used to live online, get information, connect friends, have fun, and so on. On one hand, seniors are get used to read and communicate offline. It is hard for them to change their habits. Although some of them know how to use computer, they prefer to communicate in real world when they think it's safer. On the other hand, some of them have trouble in using computer or even do not know how to use computer. They need someone can help. And it is interesting that teenagers get information from traditional media more than internet in China. It is mainly because their parents believe internet and computer are not good for their children. So they encourage their children to read more books instead of surfing the internet. And in all, our conclusion is what we talk about 2 types of community library in China. And actually, most Chinese community libraries are supported by the government. There are still some problems, such as lacking computer skills training or having not every person in both government-supported library and private library. Maybe there's some experience to learn from Americans. Hope to solve this problem in the near future. Thank you.
The next speaker that we have here is Adrian from Dominican University.
Thank you, Haixia, for this overview of the situation in Beijing about the technology uses and the libraries. And what I'm going to share with you today is about a Skype project that we the UIUC Community Informatics Lab undertook last year. And it's the outcome of really a 3 or 4 year collaborative effort between UIUC and the people over in China. So let me call my PowerPoint for again. Yeah, great. So there were 3 of us that did the project. Kate Williams is on my right, and Hui Yan, who is not here today. He's in Beijing, and he's a professor over there. So the next one, so it's a collaboration between Clark Lindsay Village in Havana and Beijing. Clark Lindsay is a little bit special because it's a project that is students from UIUC are cyber navigators there. And also, they help people with technology in the center. Also, there was a collaboration between Clark Lindsay and Senior Citizens Cooperative in Beijing. This is an organization with volunteers who come in and out to work with this older adults in the community. So they're generally a little younger than the older adults in the Clark Lindsay. And this plays into the dynamics of the Skype later on. As you can see, it's a collaborative project, and this is an outcome of a 4-year collaboration, and it began last year, March 22nd, and on the American side, the Clark Lindsay side, we attracted close to 80 participants. It was really a big turnout for that night for these people in Clark Lindsay, and 13 Chinese participants, plus researchers and administrators on both sides. So it was a big event. But this event is really a culmination of many years of collaboration and cooperation. So here, the picture on the left, we have Hui Yan, one of our visiting scholars from Beijing University, Peking University. He visited UIUC in 2009, was there for a year. It was through him that we got invited to a conference in 2010. So a lot of the people that you see, the pictures that you see here are in this room. A lot of us went there, and it was this major event involving academics and researchers there as well. So that was November 2010, yes. So during that visit, we made contacts with one of the people, the administrators from the Beijing Collaborative, which you can see on your bottom left, and she and Abdul Kalamat mooted the idea then of a Skype project between the 2 agencies. So that was how this all began. So there was a lot of conversation and discussion that went on in between. When you think about a Skype event, it's a major event, but the goings on and negotiations that led to this event took up a lot of time in implementing. So what I'm going to do is, in terms of implementation, the logistics, there were 2 from the American side and 1 from the Chinese side. But yet we found out through the implementation that all you need is just one effective translator who's able to hold the crowd and coordinate the meeting. Also, there was 1 from the Chinese side. Testing of equipment occurred on both sides, but the people at Clark Lindsay were very careful in terms of where the speakers were put, where the mic was kept, and all the logistics. And they spent a lot of time in testing equipment to ensure that everything went well on the evening. And one of the primary issues in terms of trying to get the Chinese side involved was ownership. We found through Huyan communicating that, how come we started a wiki? We wanted them to communicate. How come they weren't communicating? Then it was through, we found out that the Chinese director felt that her English wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why she wasn't communicating, you see. So, we struggle with trying to let the stakeholders own the project rather than people want to get, we didn't want to be more responsible than them because they were the main stakeholders. And that's part of community work, I guess. So in terms of the method, we use focus groups to gather data, survey, case notes, data, photographs, and notes that we need from the experience to document the study. The Chinese were very efficient in documenting the experiences of this experience immediately the day after, and all these photographs were online already. So I just want to share with you some of the photographs that we have, of the experiences on the Clark Lindsay site, and there were cameras all over. And what we had was we had a big screen, a computer on the side, and a small little camera that focused, that picked up the entire area. Right? Whereas the Chinese side, in terms of logistics, was a little bit more scaled down because of the size of the room, and they had 14 or 15 participants. They had a computer with just the camera that was facing the computer. So, there was no big screen, we were told. So this is what it looks like on the American side. So this is how we took some pictures. So this was towards the end when everything ended. And there was this cultural exchange between the two groups. Musical exchange, cultural exchange. And what was really interesting was this instrument was actually made by this guy, and he shared that with the crowd. So it was very good, interesting. Then the Americans also had fun too. We had YMCA and this dance melody and medley of American songs that were easy like I can't remember. YMCA was one of them, and some of the traditional pop songs that people knew. So on the other side, the program directors collaborated and talked about what was what the Americans was interested in. They were more interested in demonstration of Tai Chi and song and dance. So it happened. So this happened all over that day. And so there was also singing as well, and the instrument created by the guy. And this was Chinese folk songs. So you see, so in terms of the logistics, it was just this laptop, with a built-in camera, and that's how they saw us. Whereas compared to the American side, it was a big screen, which made it better in terms of the experience. So and because it was in a way pretty spontaneous, and there were a few personalities. Some outshone others. Some like to hog the computer and answer more questions than others. So, okay, what did the participants enjoy? So at the end of this collaboration, we got a focus group that happened a day after the event, and we got the participants hoping to talk about what they enjoyed. So one of the things that came up was technology. They were amazed that they were able to see Chinese interacting with them at that live moment. So the conversation was not about the technology itself, but about the experience of being able to see Chinese, interact with Chinese in real time. Right? Then the other part was very interested. The participants were very interested in the cultural exchange. They were quite fascinated with the Chinese history that they arranged. It spurred conversations and thoughts about Chinese policies, family policies. The participants reflected on the experiences of China when they visited China back in the 80s versus with China now. So there was a lot of conversation, dialogue about the culture. So okay, in terms of the impact, we were hoping that it was a lot more mention about technology, but this basically disappeared with the conversation, it was more about the experiences, and there was nothing about the innovativeness of the Skype thing. We were just saying, hey, it's almost like a conversation that we had in real time. So there was nothing to do with how wonderful the technology was. It was more, the connections that they made with the Chinese side. And they did reflect in terms of the experiences and how China has changed over the years. Additionally, they also expressed that they wanted to continue to Skype, but they were actually much more fascinated with China than any other countries that we've suggested. So some ideas for improvement. They wanted more interaction with the Chinese. They wanted more face-to-face, one-on-one, small group. So perhaps they were suggesting perhaps smaller groups for sharing instead of one large group and then talking to, so like 3 to 1 or 2 to a group. So more intimate sharing, more sessions. They started email pen pal from China to learn about each other. So they wanted to have a conversation, more in-depth conversation with people on the other side. So this was mooted as an idea. And start a book club, read about a book about China and talk actually with the people in China. So there was this really interest that generated as a result of this event. There was some concerns as well. It was dominated by one personality from one side, placement of cameras. We were able to look at the camera, but the camera was just above, you see. And this need for more contact between the participants was really evident towards the end when the seniors left because some had wanted to retire. The event stretch, we were anticipating like a 40-minute program, but it went on for 90 minutes. And it was a lot, you see, because older people get more tired towards the evening. So those who left were waving goodbye to the camera before they left wanted to make that the much more personal contact. So lesson learned: in future, make sure you have your camera above the screen so that you can see, and it's the content is a lot more intimate. Okay, so sustainability. I think because the technology is low cost, basically it doesn't cost anything to download the technology and use it. So I think in terms of doing it again, we can definitely do it again. But the collaboration and the manpower that went on in terms of negotiating and getting people to talk to each other was time-consuming. Was more time-consuming than the event itself. Interested participants, there were a lot of people. I could say, more than 90% of the crowd wanted to do it again. Let's see the next one. And again, in terms of looking at the broader picture, I think it's good to think about lifelong learning for older adults with technology, and also social engagement as you age. There's this theory that people tend to disengage from the social sphere, you see, but with technology, it brings people together, either through smaller groups or through having closer connections with other people. And again, I'll let Kate explain in terms of how the digital divide can be bridged with this technology. So maybe Kate, you can explain what the informatics movement is. I think you're the writer, and I think the rest is what this is. Right.
Sure. You want me to do it now?
Yeah, if you can.
Well, it's just the idea that when you're trying to do something you haven't done before, you experience a moment of digital divide, but you overcome it through working with other people. And so to bring so many people together brought a lot of people across the digital divide at one time when it came to Skyping. So there have been some Skyping at Clark Lindsay before, no Skyping on the senior side of China. But suddenly, after this, everyone Skyped, and everyone got it, and they got past it into the content. And then it turned out, we learned later, that not only do we know their seniors are practicing Tai Chi in China, it turns out Clark Lindsay has been a testing site for a Tai Chi program for seniors. So they had that intense Tai Chi connection we didn't even know about. So, as you say, you could get past the technical stuff, you get into the social and cultural connection, which is really the part that matters.
Thank you. All right, I think that's about it. Thank you for your time.
Our third speaker today is Andrea Stamm from the Chinese American Museum, Chicago.
There it is. Got it.
Okay, great, thank you. It may be curious that there's a museum represented in this conference today, and I just wanted to explain that there's actually a very good reason, and that we are one of the partners with an earlier grant from eChicago, the project that we were working on together with the eChicago folks, which was primarily Kate, was having to do with our website and as well as digitization. So that will be mentioned later on in the PowerPoint here. My name is Andrea, and I've been with the Chinese American Museum since before we had a building. But I just wanted to explain that we had a lot of, we've only been in existence, I'm getting ahead of myself here. Let's see if I can move forward here. This is a Chinese site now that I'm using, so the PowerPoint is in Chinese. So
Space bar should advance here.
It's a Chinese parent.
okay, there we go. Okay, cool. Okay, sorry. The mission of the Chinese American Museum is basically something that you would expect, having to do with trying to promote education and exhibitions and research relating to Chinese Americans in the American Midwest. So that's not mysterious at all. What is so interesting is that we really have not been in existence for a very long time. The founding over-organization, the Chinatown Museum Foundation, was formed in 2002, and the museum was actually not opened until 2005, which is actually not a very long time between trying to get together the concept of the need for a museum and actually having a museum opening. So that was really on very fast track when you think about it. So we've had 8 exhibitions since then, and then we had this horrendous fire in the year 2008 where we lost quite a bit. So we spent about 2 years renovating the building and getting back on course, and then reopening the exhibitions, and that happened in 2010, about a year and a half ago. So we really have only been up and running about 5 years when you think about it. We are actually dedicated, our staffing is composed of almost entirely dedicated volunteers. And we have something like 50 volunteers who serve on different capacities. And we finally were able to get one full-time paid staff member, an executive director, and then we have 4 part-time employees. The volunteers, basically we have tried to communicate with various audiences over the last few years, and one of the major ways we've done that is participating in conferences. And so you see a list there of some of the conferences that we have participated in. Most notably, we were invited to the American Association for the Advancement of Science in Hawaii to give a paper. And that was really the best thing that I think that to make our name more out there. It really helped a lot. Then many other places we have actually spoken at, and it's always a volunteer who has done the speaking. We've actually published 2 books, which is the traditional way of communicating. And we love to get in front of the media, in front of all of the local media, so that has been working fairly well. And then, of course, the visitors that we have, whether they're virtual or in-house. The technical skills of the volunteers vary, and that's important because you have to find a good match when you have a volunteer for someone who's capable of doing something, and sometimes they're around long enough you can train them to do something fairly complicated, and that's wonderful when that works. So we have volunteers who've been working with some pretty complex things like the Past Perfect software, which is museum software for smaller museums that's in about 5,000 museums in America, so it's pretty much industry standard. We also have volunteers working on website creation and maintenance, and then we have had people doing some digitization, and that was the first big effort of that was part of eChicago, and then we've continued since then. Then photography, we do as much as we can of the photography, but there's never enough time to do it well and to do it all. We also spend quite a bit of time translating our panels into Chinese and Spanish. And this will be the first time I'm talking about language, and I'm coming back to it again later on in my presentation. We have volunteers who don't speak English, and so when the instructions on how to do something are all in English, then we either have to write it all down, which we sometimes do in English, but then someone has to translate it into Chinese. And that can be very time-consuming, so sometimes we pair people one-on-one to try and figure out how you accomplish something. So that has been working well, and so far it's sustainable. We've had 9 fabulous exhibitions, and you can see from the timeline here that there's a little bit of break between 2008 and 2011, and that's obviously because of the fire. So we've been very proud of our exhibitions. They've been well received and by the press and by our visitors. One of the most important things that we have achieved, I have several slides on achievements. One is digitization. There's such a wealth of information and the resources that have been donated to us, and this particular piece that I'm showing you here is very historically important, and it has to do with when the early days in the late 19th and early 20th century, Chinese were excluded by law from coming to America. So they came as paper sons. That meant they took the identity of somebody else in their village, and then they had to learn everything there was to know about that village so that the INS, the immigration officers, would not send them back to China. So this particular document that you see online there is a cheat sheet for what happened in that particular community that this man said he was from when he wasn't. So it's very interesting. But you can see the variety of resources that we have here in the museum. The next achievement is a website. I'm still trying to get some more statistics, and I'm sorry I didn't get it in time for this presentation, but we've been growing very steadily in our website. We had kind of an earlier website that was great for the early part of the 20th century, and then recently we were very lucky that we revamped it, and you can see that the statistics are showing how many more visitors we're getting. And I wish I had the number of which percentage is from the US and which is from non-US. I'll get that later, but I don't have that for today, I'm sorry. We actually had a number of grants. This is more or less in chronological order, and you can see there's such a variety of the areas that we needed to work on, because as a young museum you need everything. So technology is not actually large in this list, and the next one that we're working on is actually related to technology, as it happens. What's happened since our grant, you can see that's what the museum looked like after the fire. Oh, sorry, I have to go back.
Here, I will take you back.
Okay. I lost it. Okay.
Did you skip a slide? Did you
I
need one
think
more
we
slide
did.
before that?
I think we skipped something here, so. That, the arrow didn't work here. Page nine. I'm not sure if you're going wrong. Okay, this is where I want to be. Thank you, sorry. So after the fire, we had to assess where we were going, and we definitely lost a lot of the museum collections, and we lost the trust within the community, and we had to build that back up. And we were very lucky that we were able to build that back up. We worked long and hard to get a much better building and to make sure that the facility was better and that the technology was better, that there are now sprinklers in the building and everything. And so we're working very hard we developed bonds because all of the local museums in the Chicago area came to our rescue. And they used us as a case study for how to deal with a disaster. And they said, I'm very sorry that it had to be you, but this has been so helpful for us. So we got so much help from so many major cultural institutions in Chicago. It was absolutely incredible. Very gratifying. So to talk about our visitors, we have a very, 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 very diverse group of visitors. You can see from that picture there, this was a workshop on kite making. We brought someone from China to show children how to make kites. And so we definitely had a wonderful workshop on that. I'm moving forward a little bit faster here. My time's running out. The language issue, well, we're communicating in English and Chinese, but what does that actually mean? Spoken Chinese means 3 languages, Cantonese, Mandarin, and Taishanese, which is a dialect of Cantonese. And then when you write Chinese, there's 2 forms of Chinese, and so there's traditional characters or simplified characters, and we've had quite a few discussions just about which characters you're supposed to use when you put something in writing in Chinese, so even that is a difficult issue for us. We also do Spanish because of our proximity to the Pilsen neighborhood. So what's working in reaching visitors? Actually, the mainstream media we are always inviting, and they once in a while really do come through for us, but mainly it's the Chinese media that come through. Radio, TV, and newspapers are constantly there for us. There's a lot of Chinese media in Chicago, and they do show up. But we have press conferences, press reliefs, and we're starting to be able to afford a little bit of advertising, so that helps. The website, we are still a work in progress. There's a lot to go, but we know now where to go. We have a lot of good use of email. We have this great lecture series because of the 100-year centennial of Chicago's Chinatown, and that's very well received. And we have a lecture this afternoon at the museum in this series. And then we've had concerts, and then social media, we know we need to get better with that. We're working so hard to try and get caught up in social media, but so many of us are older volunteers. We're not exactly doing that too well yet. And we're getting some of the younger people who are volunteering to help with us. The community outreach, we have so many major events that we participate in, but actually they're not actually events, they're actually all in the community, and so we're just having a struggle to get to be known in the community because a lot of the shopkeepers don't even know there is a museum in Chinatown. And then we have worked with a number of organizations that are listed there on the bottom, and we've had some great events with them, and it's worked out beautifully for us. And then on the top right, there are family associations. That's another purely Chinese American phenomenon where you have the Moy family, and you know, take each major Chinese family. They in America, they like to be able to honor their ancestors and stick together as a group. So that we have family associations that are now part of the current exhibition that is just opening today. I better move here forward a little bit. We have a lot of challenges, and we haven't lost hope. We're very happy that we still know where we're going and what we need to work on. And so technology is one of those major areas that we really need to work on. The Chicago Cultural Alliance has been fabulous in giving training to local museums and organizations, and they're starting to give us some technology training as well. And keeping up to date with technology is really the hardest part of all. We need to try and create a true digital collection website, and that's something that Kate had talked to us about a long time ago. We have the raw material now, we need to get it online. The other areas here that we've worked on, just to skip down a little bit, we've got challenges because we need to have more staffing and more volunteers. We need more money to continue the museum going, and then we need someone who is able to tell us financially how we're doing. So those are more challenging. But some of the bigger issues, marketing and promotion. You know, how do we assess? How do we measure success? And we have in the past had a number of measures, and we need to figure out if that's really the way to go in the future. We've had web statistics, the number of visitors, exit interviews, and feedback forms. And we've even invited the community to come in and have some chats with us to find out what's going on. So we're working on assessment, but I think we need something a little more formal with assessment. And finally, sustainability. We just hope we can survive. We're trying very hard, we're doing a lot, and I think a lot of it depends on all of the resources and technology that we can build into this equation. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Great
Nice poster.
Isn't it beautiful?
Alright, now that ends our discussion, or like our presentations, but we're open to discussions now for any questions. So if you have any questions, yes.
One more speaker. One more speaker.
We have one more.
Zhao, come.
Sorry.
Her name is Zhao, come. Last. Here.
Sorry.
Here. One last speaker. It's okay. We have more time. Much time.
More time. That's weird. The last speaker is Kang Zhao. She's from the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. Apologize for that.
And for those people watching from Beijing, she's also from Peking University.
Good morning, everyone. I'm a PhD student from Peking University, and now I'm visiting student at Community Informatics Lab at Gateway's UIUC. And my presentation is about research I'm working on with Professor Kate Williams at Community Informatics Lab. Our research is about the globalization of the U.S. Information and Library School, and our research is from the case of China. Our research is to answer the questions that how we can explain globalization of the information and library schools in the U.S. from the case of China. And there are two methods for collecting the data. One is we collect the school list from the American Library Associate list and the iSchool list that have the information about the library and information schools. And we went to the website of those library and information schools and see their faculty, and find the Chinese faculty from their website. And the second part is we plan to do interview with those Chinese faculty who are now working at those library and information school in U.S. And we want to, from the first part, we want to know the distribution of the Chinese scholars in U.S. library and information school. And in the second part, we want to, through the conversation with those scholars, to know what the opportunity for those Chinese faculty for their professional development in U.S. And we also want to know what they can contribute to the development of library and information school in U.S. And the dependent variable here is the numbers of Chinese core faculty at the library and information school in U.S. And we want to know the relationship between different independent variable and dependent variable. And here's some independent variable listed, such as school type, region, location, and you will see some data we collected now. Here is the summarization of the distribution of Chinese faculties in U.S. Library and Information School. And we can see there are 4 universities that have the most Chinese faculties in U.S. They are Drexel University, Syracuse, Pennsylvania State and the Indiana University. Each of the university have 5 Chinese faculties, and they are all information school, and 2 of them are also library schools. And as to the percentage of Chinese scholars, there are 2 library schools who have the most highest percentage of Chinese faculty. That is Louisiana State University and State University of New York at Buffalo. So you can see in this table there are totally 37 universities which has at least 1 Chinese faculty. And in our research, there are totally 48 universities in our research list. So we can see there are over 2/3 of the university who has at least 1 Chinese faculty. I think that's a large proportion. Here's the table we want to know which independent variable that will impact the distribution of Chinese faculty in U.S. And in the first table, we divide those library and information school into 3 types. One is library school, and the second is information school, and the third is the university, which are both library and information school. You can see from the first table that library school has the highest percentage of Chinese faculty, that is 6.31%. And you can see there are more library schools than other type of schools here. And also, the library school has the largest size of Chinese faculties. But when we look at the individual university level, we know information schools has the most, as to the number of Chinese faculty, they have the largest size. But when we consider the whole schools, and we see the percentage, library school has a much higher percentage of Chinese faculty than information school. And from the second table, we can see those library and information schools are located at different regions in U.S. And the northeast region has the most numbers of Chinese faculty, and also the highest percentage of Chinese faculties. So that may be because the Chinese faculty they graduate and get their PhD degree received for a university that is at a very developed region. But we are still to explore the reason that why the distribution of the Chinese faculty is like that. And in this table, we can see clearly that the university which are located at metropolitan city, they have more library and information schools, and also has the largest number of Chinese faculty there. And of course, they has a relatively higher percentage of Chinese faculty. So I think traditionally, because Chinese when they get their degree and seek for a job, they usually want to settle down to at a city that is a metropolitan city, because there will be much more opportunity for the professional development. And from the table below, we can see there are 2 types. The university rank is according to the data is from the Carnegie Foundation, and we see the different type. That means the university who can give the doctor, who have the doctor program, who have the master program, and the third is the research university with high-level research activity, and the fourth is research university with very high research activity. And the third type university has a relatively high percentage of Chinese faculty. We can see that when the university rank is higher, it it tends to be has more Chinese faculty there. It's obvious that when people graduate and they want to find a job that which university has a higher top rank in the U.S. So that's why there are more Chinese faculty in the research university with high level research activity. And we try to find if there's very clear correlation between our independent variables and dependent variables. And I just take 3 independent variables as an example. First is the university enrollment. We can see it is not a clear correlation, but it is it shows a slight negative correlation between the university enrollment and the percentage of Chinese faculty. But it is still need to be explored why it is like that. We need to know whether it's objective or subjective factors that influence that distribution. And in the second picture, it shows the international enrollment in library and information schools and the relationship with the percentage of Chinese faculty. It's a little bit clearly that it is also a negative correlation between the 2 factors. And it is the same case with the third feature, that the university's Asia enrollment rate and the percentage of Chinese faculty has a clearly negative correlation. And we also collected the education background information of those Chinese faculty. We found that most of those Chinese faculty, they got their PhD degree in U.S. That is about more than 3/4 of the total Chinese faculty. And others, they got their PhD degree from Canada, China, Singapore, Netherlands, and UK. And we can see here is the timeline of which year those Chinese faculty got their PhD degree. And the earliest year traces back to 1987. That's very early. And we can clearly divide those 20 years period into 2 parts. We can see the first 10 years, there are more Chinese faculty. They got a job at a university in U.S. So maybe it is a phenomenon that can represent that as the library and information school become more and more global. There are more and more Chinese scholars they search a job in U.S. And also every 2 or 3 years there is a peak. So I think it's very very natural, because usually the job vacancy always fluctuates during the different years. And as more and more Chinese faculty they graduate and get new job at recent years. So it shows there may be more opportunities for them to get a position in U.S. universities as the trend of globalization. And our next steps, first, is based on the data we already collected. We want to explore whether the independent variables have significant impact on the dependent variable. Even we can see either clear or not or vague relationship between them. We need to explain why the distribution is like that, and also we will explain what makes makes those distribution of Chinese faculty at library and information schools in the U.S. And we can answer the questions through our telephone interview, which we already get our IRB, and there are 2 interviews have been completed, and we got very informative data from those interviews, and there are also 3 more interviews already scheduled recently. And during the interview, some Chinese faculty, they have the idea that Chinese has played a very important role in the process of the collaboration, and they has very important impact on the collaboration of of university development of library and information schools. So we can explore more from the data we get from those interviews. Thank you very much.
Our session ends here today, but we have more time for question and answers. So if you have any questions for me or for one of our speakers, and also for Kate, and also for Abdul as well, go ahead.
Can I ask if the panelists would mind going up to the front so we can see them all?
Oh, yes, of course.
Even with our mood,
Yes.
the audience will
Visual.
the audience will be empathy.
They won't see the audience as you do.
That means Qilong, you have to be sure both cameras are working.
Do we have to go up and ask questions?
You should go to the mic
Yes,
first,
yes.
yeah.
Morning, everyone. I'm Paolo Guilde, librarian at Robert Morris University, and a former student of Kate and Abdul as well. Actually, Kang, your research is very fascinating. It was very engaging. My question is actually for Adrian. So you're doing that Skype thing. Do you have any basically ideas or what do you call this? Do you have, because I think what you have on what people said are from Clark Lindsay, right? Do you have any ideas what the Chinese senior citizens have in mind after the Skype event?
Initially we wanted to include data
Mike.
Oh, I see. Initially, we wanted to include data from both sides, but because then when we applied for the IRB, there was a lot of protests that was happening in the Middle East, you see, and there was a lot of protests. So the people of the organization was very worried about the collaboration being a lot more public than it should be. So retracted there. They said they could go ahead, but we sensed the hesitation. We didn't want to impose on them because this was the first time activity. So we just said, let's go ahead with it, although we had incomplete data, so to speak. So, what did they actually say? They were very interested in doing it again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They wanted to have a repeat performance. But I think what really will be helpful going forward for those programs or retirement communities who wanted to do something is that I think it's always good to have an instruction program in terms of what happens, like one activity moving to another. And what we did in this process was there was some turn-taking going on, the transitions, okay, now it's your turn to sing, and there was a question and answer at the end, you see. So we had to sort of block off time so that there wasn't a lull period between the two events. So I don't know, what else did they say, Kate? I can't remember.
That's it. The local official in China was very anxious, and we didn't want to put the local organization under any pressure. But still, they want to do it again. So we're confident.
Without data, right? Without
Yeah,
collecting
they weren't comfortable with collecting data. That's what the local official was anxious about.
Mm.
So we said, fine, go on with the collaboration, but we won't worry about collecting data in China this time.
Nice.
Yeah, I have a question about the use of Skype and the Chinese diaspora.
respects to just figure out what is the possibility for the future. For example, the museum having Skype sessions with museums in China. Family associations that gather, families that gather in China, having Skype with relatives that might be in other places. Or the library in Chinatown being connected to the new development of computers in libraries in China. All of these, it seems to me, are opportunities for Skype and for communication. And I'm just wondering, what do you see as the possibilities for the future to have this online, our capacity to maintain connections? And here I'm talking about China and the US, but really the implication is China and the world, because there are Chinese populations everywhere. And so we could be Skyping US, France, Chicago, Shanghai, all of these connections are possible. And we all know Chinese people are everywhere. So, how is this going to happen? How is the diaspora going to come into being online?
Thank you, Abdul, for the question. It's a very interesting one. I think that the museum could actually try and figure out what would be a topic that would be appropriate that would draw on people to perform Skyping between, say, Beijing and Chicago, or Hong Kong or Taiwan and Chicago. It does seem entirely doable in this day and age, and as we said, it's free, so that's not an issue. Whatever means that we can use to connect people globally is really very helpful. So I think that is something we could consider in the future for our museum.
I'm thinking about Kang and Haixia are going back to Beijing at the end of the summer, and they could become organizers for such a thing, which would be fabulous, in terms of maybe an exhibit, in your museum, connected to some people in China, say at Beida, that might be experts in that field, to be able to make commentary. I mean, you had an exhibit on tofu. I'm sure there's someone in Beijing knows something about tofu.
Right.
Right, it's a good idea.
No, it does sound very interesting. We'll have to do some exploration.
I'm just wondering, in terms of programmatic issues for the libraries, I think it would be great if there's an activity where you say, all right, we're going to be talking to people in China using Skype from Saturday 1 to 2. Come if you're interested. That could start the ball rolling. And also to build on your very interesting question, I think what really needs to happen is in terms of best practices in terms of using Skype, what to do in terms of logistics. So I think if you have a best practices manual, you should be able to say, okay, we can do this across the world in different contexts.
I have a question to ask Andrew. Is it your museum is a branch library of the CPR, Chicago Public Library? And what's the difference between the branch library of Chicago CPR?
Okay, we are a privately funded museum, and we are not related to the CPL at all. We're not a library, we're a museum, and we do have some publications and some research. We're starting to put together our library, but it's in the very beginning stages. So we really, we work with other organizations. One of the organizations we work with is Chicago Public Library, but we're not in any way affiliated with them.
Okay, got it.
And actually, to your question, we, as Cyber Navigators, we are funded by a private foundation, but then we're also working with the Chicago Public Library. So a lot of people come in and they think that we're one of the Chicago Public Library, like the original staff, and they find it very interesting. And actually, a lot of people also think that we're volunteers because this is a free service to libraries. Anybody can come in, they will try to hog all your hours too. But the service here is just something that a lot of people know about, and they are taking advantage. But they do want more hours too, because they were like, oh, you only have 20 hours a week here, but there's like 30, 40 of us. So how much time are you going to actually give us? They always expect more time, and that's one of the growing, I think, needs of the community, at least for Chinatown, Chicago.
And how do you describe their digital skills at present? And what do you think they want to get most from the use of computers?
A lot of them want entertainment. They prefer to download a whole bunch of like free videos, and they ask me to do that, and I'm like, I can't really do that because there's copyright issues. So, but another portion, so about I would say probably 60%, when I go and observe them, they're all watching some sort of videos from like various like Baidu or like video sites in China. Then there's also this other portion, about I would say about 20 to 30%, that's always researching. They're asking me about news sites, Chinese news sites. And I mean, I know how to speak Chinese, but I don't read very much or write it. So I do know how to type it because I know how to speak it, but I can only help so much. So I think it would be great if I can get more information from you guys from Beijing, because you guys, I'm sure you have handouts, and that's the other issue too. Like, I've been trying to make handouts for people, the seniors, to get started. But it's just so time-consuming because they're very visual with handouts. If you put text only, they will not understand. So I take a lot of time to translate English handouts to Chinese at the library with my limited skills, and I work with my branch manager too. But she's fluent, but she doesn't have that kind of time to always proof my handouts. And sometimes I actually have been starting to work with the patrons as I'm teaching them. I'm like, oh, can you help me out with this word? And then I'm typing it. So yeah, definitely it would be a great help if we can all just connect and maybe actually Skype all the time.
Well, it's an interesting question about what is the future of the library.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's an interesting question about the future of the library given globalization. Fran, for example, talked about in Skokie how there are, 70 or 80 languages in that community. And we know that there are a lot of information online, both in terms of web pages as well as streaming. We can watch China news in Chinese or English. So my question to you is, to what extent has the library ever Skyped, and to what extent in their community room would it be possible to organize a program where either the seniors or young people and so on could come in and regularly receive communications from China, as well as possibly upload information for people in China as a regular part of the library's program?
That is a really, really good question, because what I'm noticing is that a lot of people have laptops, and then when they're using their laptops, they only use it to watch videos. They also know that there is the function of video chatting or Skyping, but they feel uneasy about it, because they're like, okay, what if my private information gets out? There's that concern. And then also, there are a lot of people that want to Skype, don't have the money, but we do have laptops in the library too. We have 4. I have recently returned, and I realized that they're all not working. But that's one thing, but we'll get that fixed. So then I bring in my laptop. But people, about Skyping, I think they need to, first off, they need to have resources. So if they have their own laptop, then they can do that. If they don't, if they have a desktop, it's very hard to teach them that. Although we can do that, and actually that's also why I bought a projector for the cyber navigating group class. At some point in time when I worked there 2 years ago, it got really busy. Like I had like 10 people in my class. I was gonna purchase a projector then, but I had to go to a different bridge for other reasons. But I think that I'm gonna help try and start that up again, and that's a really good idea. I'm gonna probably have like Saturday sessions with them, like have a senior session, have a young adult session, and then that would probably expand on their interests. Because right now, a lot of people, they're just interested in watching videos, only in news, and they do know about it, but they feel like there's a lot of privacy issues. They feel like, okay, is my information being shared?
Well, one of the things that we've done is we have a research group, and in 3 different locations in China, we Skype on a monthly basis. And so I was wondering, for example, asking Kang and Haixia if, for example, the students who are interested in library science and libraries at Beijing might be interested in helping to work with facilitating this communication. Because it seems to me that aside from the interest of governments, that the interest of people everywhere in the world is to figure out how they can learn from each other and communicate with each other. Whether they are interested in music or dancing or whatever it is, that's the future of our planet, that all of us can communicate in someone. So we have to find ways to do that. And if we can find groups of people that are interested in the same subjects, for instance, I'm back to tofu. There could be a discussion in the library, on that. And I know that Chinese parents would probably love to have their children interacting with people and on subjects, in China, to keep them a part of the Chinese experience. So I put that question to you because you're going to go back and you're going to tell people about this, and I'm just wondering what could come from it, in your sense. Do you see the possibility of getting to work with her so that you continue this? We want this to go on. This is not, eChicago is not a one-time event. We want this to impact things.
I think from the museum perspective, I can think of one more thing, Abdul, which is that sometimes it might be easier if we had an online exhibit that then we could all talk about if we Skype, rather than trying to do something that's much more based in one camp or the other. And that we haven't really had a lot of online exhibits yet, and it's something that's on our to-do list.
You could have a joint exhibit, partly from here and partly from China.
Right.
One online exhibit.
Yeah.
Fabulous.
Sounds like a grant.
And there's one problem exists that, as far as I know, the software are sometimes different in US and in China, because the people I know usually in the academy, the scholars always use Skype to communicate globally, but as to the common people, in China, they usually use QQ or other softwares for communication. If you ask them to try a new software, they will feel uneasy about it. So I think the first thing we must know that what their normal experience with those software and what they are familiar with, and how to help them communicate with the software that they are already easy to use.
In the library, do they use QQ?
They do. They do use QQ a lot. Actually, very few people use Skype, but then they still also use QQ to, they post their blogs all the time, and I'm just like, that you can use MSN or Skype or something else that involves video chatting. So. But they're not very comfortable with camera.
Oh, excuse me. Do you have QQ?
Yes, I do.
Oh, I have QQ, so we
I'm sorry. we should use Scam. Do you have Scam?
No, I don't. Yes. Well, I do, but I don't use it very much because most of my friends don't really use it either, since they're all in the city.
Scam is also for free.
It's
like QQ.
Oh, yes.
I don't think that Skype is the point. I think making contact is the point.
Yeah,
and if
right.
QQ is better,
Right.
I mean, QQ's account numbers are in 10 digits now. There's so many users of QQ. So why not use QQ and just forget about Skype? It's not an issue.
Okay.
And maybe you can have a Tai Chi instructor from China teach your senior citizens here. Yeah, that would be great, I think. For Haixia, actually, thanks for teaching us about community libraries in China. I was wondering what kind of information are they looking for, and do you think there are similarities between a community library here in the US and China?
In China, most people go to the community library. They just want to entertainment, just to have fun. The community library have no research or have less research object or have research functions. I think this is very different from American community library. Most Americans go to library to find job, to check email, or do the other things which I think is important. But Chinese people just have most Chinese people go to library just have fun. This is what I know.
Well, only but have fun. To watch.
Because they use computer for fun. But most times they borrow books to learn. Yeah.
And read the newspapers.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
Yeah. Can I ask the three people who haven't spoken to say what's on their mind? Because sometimes the quiet people have the deepest idea.
Actually, I do.
Who are you?
My name is Song San, and I'm from the north side of Chinatown. I have a little questions, and then I don't know how important it is, but it seems to me like we are talking about scholar communicating from here to China, but how can we reach out to the poor community as far as communications or sharing ideas? I'm very sure that poor communities, they have scholars as well too, but in their own ways. How do we reach them? That's my question to the parents.
We have some project in China that the government give funding to the local community to establish the infrastructure that can and computer community technology centers that can help those rural areas. But it is still under development. And as far as in our research, the most public computing sites in Beijing, their locations are around the center of the city. But there is not as much computer labs in the rural suburb area as in the center of the city. That's a problem. But they are doing much. The condition is changing now. They try to help build computer lab for the rural area to make the poor community get connected to the outside world. But I think the problem is not the infrastructure and the computer. The problem is even they can go to the community center to use the computers. They don't know how to use computers. They lack the basic skill to use computers and to search. They even don't know how to search information through the internet. So I think we are still researching how to make those projects sustainable, and we need to set the job position like the set navigator here to help those people at least to have the basic trainings to know how to use computers, how the computer can help them in their daily life, such as finding a job and improve their self conditions. So that's what we are still researching on.
Just to add to your comment, I'm going to recall a conversation that we had with Kate just this morning. In terms of how people get online, I think sometimes how creative you are in terms of putting where the computers are. So we had this conversation about a social worker in San Francisco library being in the toilet to talk to homeless people about issues. So I've also read articles published in Social Work work that computers are even cited in Latino salons, you see, for people to use computers there, you see. So you put where the people, computers where the people are in these unconventional places. So it's really helps your creativity.
We have the concept of the barefoot doctor. We need the concept of the barefoot cyber navigator.
Now wait a minute. As a cyber navigator, oh, my shoes, I keep. I will say, however, as a cyber navigator, especially at Sulzer, the city of Chicago has 65 different languages that are spoken in Chicago public schools. On any given day, someone will come in, it is guaranteed that someone will come in a language that I don't speak. I rely heavily on Google Translate. Now, it's not a perfect system, but I can open a screen in English in any of the languages that Google Translate supports, and I can have a conversation. And what that does is two things. Number one, it shows my commitment to being a bridge, that I know how to get to you and speak to you, all right? Number two, it makes it possible for us to communicate in a way that can fix your problem. So from the standpoint of what are we doing, like I said, I rely really heavily on Google Translate, especially for languages, and I have no idea, when I type in the very bare bones part in English, it automatically pops up, and you can physically see the people relax because we are able to communicate. And this could be about things that are very important, about health. A lot of my patrons ask me about health information. I have to be able to understand, where does it hurt? Why does it hurt? And being able to demonstrate the commitment to extend your hand is just a very, very powerful thing.
Actually, it is time. We must actually end our discussion here. But thank you everybody for coming and for participating. And for those of us that are online, please keep tweeting or text or emailing or and more comments. We are very happy to hear more about this. We want to continue this discussion. We want to continue it. We want to continue to progress and learn more and exchange with each other. And thank you very much.